Hey there, good evening. Nice to see you. It's time for the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to reporters and writers, editors, journalists, people who put stuff out in the Bronx so you can get a little background behind what's going on in our media and the things that they write. Second segment, we've got a wonderful author who's just delightful and has a new novel out. And we'll do that in just a moment. But now let's go to the city's Bronx reporter, and that is the city's Bronx reporter. It is our friend Jonathan Custodio. Jonathan, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Always good. Jonathan, as I mentioned to you just before we started, you wrote this story that says borough groups joined forces to oppose Cross-Bronx Expansion project. My first thought was, oh, this is the project that Congressman Torres has been working on, along with many Bronx advocates trying to cap the Cross-Bronx, et cetera. But no, there's a whole other plan coming down from the state that many of these advocates oppose. I hadn't heard about it. What is the plan? This is coming down from Governor Hochul, isn't it?
Yeah, so this is a $900 million plan known as kind of the Five Bridges proposal. And the plan is primarily to repair 5 bridges along the Cross-Bronx Expressway that are in badly need of support. Pretty much everyone agrees these bridges need to get repaired. In order to do that, New York State DOT got a federal grant of $150 million that would allow them to build what they deem as connector roads. These roads would then be ways for people to travel on the expressway while the bridges are getting repaired. So they would help facilitate bridge repair, but then they would become permanent with several possibilities that could include pedestrian pathways, bike lanes, and also lanes for busways, so ultimately vehicles. And so many advocacy groups, Bronx groups, transit groups are rejecting any type of additional roadways, even if they are meant to facilitate the repair, and are pushing for there to be other ways to make those repairs without having to build any additional
roadways. And that's the last thing we need in that large section of the Bronx is more cement. I just want to give the people that you wrote about who are objecting to this, and that is the Bronx River Alliance, Transportation Alternatives, the Riders Alliance, Bronx Community Board 6, the Point CDC, Nos Cadamos, and the Morning Glory Community Garden. Now, here's what just, is just a Bronxite who's a Bronx consumer. I do own a car and I ride the roadways. It blows my mind that this is being moved forward when it's been made very clear that there's the whole other effort spurred on by some of the funding gotten by Congress member Richie Torres and other many of these same groups to cap the Bronx Cross-Bronx Expressway. If the governor has this plan and this need, why wouldn't they communicate with people and let's work together to craft the right total picture for the cross? I just don't. That's why I was so surprised at your story. It's like we're going to do this and we don't even know or care about what the people of the Bronx have been trying to do. I don't know if there's an answer to that, but that's what my question is.
So state DOT officials would, definitely reject claims that, they haven't been involved. They've been meeting with the board. They've been meeting with these groups this year. They're planning to hold public hearings pretty soon. And, they emphasize that they're still in the design phase of this project. But while they are in the early phases, they did say it's tentatively scheduled to start construction next year. So,
wow.
Maybe, we all know that projects get pushed back all the time. So, who's to say that?
We'll see. Do you think there's going to? I would think it's just logical that there would be a lawsuit, that ultimately they would put some kind of injunction to stop this from going forward, unless there's the state DOT and the governor decide to relook at it voluntarily.
It's certainly possible. I wouldn't rule anything out.
Yeah, I would think so. A while back, Jonathan, there was a study of interchanges between roadways in New York City, and if you, let's say, driving south on the Bronx River Parkway, and you want to make that connector to get onto, let's say, the Cross Bronx, going out to the Whitestone Bridge or the Throgsneck Bridge. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a totally ridiculous interchange. That whole area, and that includes, let's say, if you're getting off the Bronx River Parkway, that bridge, I'm assuming that's one of the bridges that is in disrepair. In their defense, I can understand why they want to redo that, because getting off that Bronx River Parkway that winds around, you got to move over 3 lanes and there's cars coming from every direction. It's very dangerous. I'm sure there are accidents. So, in their defense, I understand why they would want to have this kind of a plan.
Yeah, you kind of just said now, and like I said earlier, no one disputes that the bridges need to be repaired, and that's something that both advocates and state officials have emphasized. And I think the sort of split is, how do you get there? Like I said, advocates are very much want to do this without building any additional roadways, no matter what they're used for.
And the thought of building stuff in just using that area, that Bronx River Parkway interchange with the Cross Bronx, the idea of putting more concrete and doing it, and then still having to do the project to cap the Cross Bronx Expressway. I don't know. Maybe this is my editorial comment. It doesn't make sense. Seems to me you should combine the two projects, get that $50 million funding to be part of the whole vision of what we want to do. You can mark it down. That's what Gary said.
So it's worth noting that the cap the Cross Bronx, the $2 million study, the points of the Bronx of the expressway that they're looking to cap would be separate from this project, at least geographically, west and east of the bridges.
That really, I say I didn't know that. That's something I wasn't aware of. So that's actually not in the place that they're talking about capping the Cross Bronx.
No, but
Oh,
the issue that people is that fundamentally for folks, it seems to be in contrast with each other, because for many of these groups for this coalition, this is essentially an expansion of the Cross Bronx Expressway, which would fundamentally oppose capping it.
yeah, right. So right, because now they're adding more roadways, interchanges, and things like that. It's complicated. I hope smarter heads prevail. There was something else that you wrote about, I guess it was last month, that was very interesting to me. There was, and some people didn't know about this, there was supposed to be like an astronomical observatory right at the Jerome Park Reservoir, which is kind of a nice place for it because it's an open space and everything else. And so there was supposed to be an observatory where people, school groups, and the general public could come and, of course, see the stars and get some education about it. But now that's been retracted. You want to, and you wrote about that. Why is that being retracted?
Yeah, so the Amateur Astronomers Association, which were spearheading this, they said that the biggest reason was that they didn't want to accept complete legal liability, which the city was requiring them to do. Now the city requires private organizations or nonprofit organizations to do this pretty frequently. It is a bit of a standard when you're using city-owned land. But for them, as a small organization that they are, they just were not prepared to take on that kind of liability. The city had also asked them to hire an observatory director and adopt a time-limited license. And these kind of all together just made it more difficult. Now, the association stressed to me that this is not the end at all, and that they very much have not given up on it. But as far as that site goes, by the reservoir, that is done. And this was estimated to cost about $100,000. It's been in the works for a few years, and some people there were pretty disappointed because
Yeah,
Yeah.
But a small not-for-profit. Now, I can frankly understand both sides. I understand that the small not-for-profit says we just don't have the money. On the other hand, I certainly understand from the city, if God forbid something were to happen there, I mean, it could be an accident, could be some social situation, whatever it is, and the property owner, the city of New York, gets sued. I can understand why they'd want to be indemnified significantly, so that doesn't happen. But now, so then where else would they go? I mean, if they need to get that insurance one way or the other, I mean, what else are they possibly going to do?
So the association said they're going to be, exploring more deeply, working with private institutions to see if there is a way for them to put this forward without having to use, city-owned land. They are looking at other locations in the 5 boroughs. They wouldn't say, they're not ready to say where exactly.
Right.
But
Well, those kinds of issues are very sensitive to if you're talking to somebody about land and property. We all know what that entails. I hate to ask this question. It's my least favorite question. Does that mean the Bronx is out at this point, or you think it's possible that they could find? Listen, we've got a lot of land that's available on shorelines where there's space.
mhm. Yeah, it's we can't say the Bronx is out. We can definitely say
Okay,
that this site is
that's
out.
spot because it is
Um,
city-owned property.
right,
Right,
right.
right, right. So we don't know. Listen, just about a minute left. Jonathan, what you're working on? What do we need to know? You want to give us a clue about some stuff? I think you told us about the Melrose Library.
The Melrose Library just reopened after renovations. They had a celebration for it today. It opened in December. It was closed for
We,
more than
we should mention that we're recording this on December 10th because this will air a little bit later. But go ahead.
right. It was closed for more than 3 years. Renovations include uh, particularly a new elevator. The building previously didn't have an elevator, and a new floor, which was the building was originally when it was originally constructed, it was 4 stories. 2 of those stories were wiped out in a fire in the 1950s.
Oh,
Um,
I was not
so
aware.
replace one of those doors, 6 decades later. I mean, definitely people were really excited about it. They had a lot of local youth there, uh, by
Listen,
schools, story
more
time.
libraries in the Bronx is a good thing. I vote yes. That's great. You were there. Listen, thecity.org, right?
City.nyc.
City.nyc. You can read Jonathan's work, and they really cover New York City, including the Bronx, obviously, very, very well, partially because Jonathan does such a great job. We thank you for joining us on the Bronx Buzz.
Thanks for having me.
Great. Okay, we are going to take that short break. And then, yes, it will be this book, The Rise and Fall and Return of Sarah Mandelbaum. And we'll have the author right after. Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. I'm really happy because this book is a fabulous piece of work, an incredible piece of work in some ways. And we're going to meet the author right now. It is Cara Kagan. Cara, now here we go. Here's the credits. I got them all. Writer, musician, commercial copywriter, award-winning author, writing style and beauty for Women's Wear Daily. You created, which you mentioned to me a moment ago, Girl, the first multicultural and multi-sized fashion and beauty magazine for teens. You have been the beauty and fitness director for Elle magazine, right? I get that.
Yeah.
And currently, talk about the Bronx, you are the person who runs the KRVC Community Book Club. There we go, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, Gary.
Cara Kagan. Just before we get to the book, which I know you're very proud of and you should be, let's talk a little bit about you. What inspires you? You have so many things that you've done. Like, what is kind of like the thing that motivates you, that makes you really want to do all this stuff?
I think it's people. You meet exciting people, or you meet people who need your help, or you meet somebody who has a story to tell, or somebody who does something so great that it's inspiring. And then I like to get involved. I did love fashion and beauty, and that sort of and magazines when I was a kid. I loved all the magazines. And
you said did, so that means it's something a little bit in the past. Sorry, I'm listening very carefully at what you're saying.
Awesome. Well, there are no magazines anymore. And, the funniest thing about me in the fashion industry, so I always loved beauty, because to me it was the great equalizer. Everybody could wear lipstick, everybody could wear eyeshadow. And I've been short my whole life, which clothes are not really made for short girls. And I had bad feet, so I couldn't wear beautiful shoes. I didn't have a lot of money, so handbags, all that stuff. And somehow I ended up getting into magazines where all of that stuff mattered. And even though I was in beauty, which I loved and always felt comfortable and at home with, and I loved the science and the chemistry behind skincare, I was at these places that were looking at your bag and looking at your shoes, and I'm 98 pounds and they're telling me I'm fat, and it was just not the healthiest environment. So so then you morphed and you moved toward doing more literature and books and your own writing, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, and commercial copywriting to pay the bills, because no one's looking you up and down in the halls when you're doing that. And
yeah, of course.
So
let's just talk about, before we get into the specifics of the rise and fall and return of Sarah Mandelbaum. Did you? Let's just get to the beginning. Did you say, I got this book in my head and I want to spit it out? But what I must ask you along with that, it's so detailed. There's so much personal stuff in there, from dialogue to the, an interaction with people on very personal matters and all that stuff. Is there something biographical in there? Oh, tell us the truth.
You're 100% accurate. Oh. I would say that it's 75% autobiographical, and a lot of the stuff that happens to Sarah happened to me. But the really interesting thing, Sarah's way cooler than I am. And
so you created a character you aspire to be.
Absolutely. And she's a way better musician than I am. But she sort of took on this life of her own once I started creating her. And she started to tell me what to do and where her life was progressing. And it wasn't always where mine led me. And I knew I was on the right track when I was in my writing workshop. And the class was debating if Sarah would say a certain thing. And I said, Sarah would absolutely say that, because I would, and Sarah's me. And this woman in my class said, oh no, Sarah's way cooler than you.
I guess that's a backsided compliment there. Yeah, it's like you created something that's better than you. That's funny. Just out of curiosity, where was that workshop?
So I actually so to backtrack for 1 second, when you asked me if I had this book in me that I wanted to get
Yes.
out, I always thought I had really interesting experiences in this industry because I met a lot of famous people and
Right.
everybody's a little crazy. But I never really thought about it. And then I started taking a creative writing workshop at Gotham in the city. And the teacher would give us, it was intro, and the teacher would give us prompts, write about your this, write about your that. And you would like scribble a couple paragraphs and read it out loud. So she said, write about a seminal moment in your life. And the last chapter of the book, Sarah has a run-in with two famous people at a restaurant on the Upper East Side. And she was with her best friend, Penny. And
But by the way, this is what I meant about intricacy and detail, because the entire thing speaks to exactly what the conversations were in an incredibly detailed way that you don't often get from, good fiction, et cetera, et cetera. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
thank you. No, thank you so much. So this whole exchange happens between Sarah, Penny, and these famous people in the restaurant. And that happened to me.
Wow.
when I was in my 30s. And I was with a friend, Penny, who's not exactly the Penny in the book. And I just named her Penny the pastry chef, which I loved the alliteration.
Yes.
And so the people in my writing class loved it. They said, oh, the dynamic between Sarah and Penny, it's so witty, it's really fun. And initially I thought I'd write like Sex in the City, which is written in little vignettes. It's not a full novel.
Okay.
And then as I started showing the class my vignettes, reading them out loud, they said, oh, no. This is a novel, Sarah. And I named her Sarah Mandelbaum because my maiden name was Applebaum. And it was Cara Applebaum, Sarah Mandelbaum.
Okay.
And, and then the writing class, I did a couple more classes at Gotham, and then I went on to Catapult in the city. Which, like that writing workshop, I think I finished my book in that writing workshop.
So how many years was this work in play? It sounds like it wasn't like you just sat down and did it. It sounds like you were gestating this thing for a very long time. Or do I have that wrong?
If I take care of 4 aging parents, and there were times when I was writing the book, all 4 of them were in different hospitals at the same time. And I think, all things being equal, I would have written it in under a year. And then you have the shopping around process, how to get an agent, do you get a publishing company, and that's a lengthy process.
That's considerable.
Yeah.
But let's just get back to the writing of it. Did you make yourself write every day? Did you wake up in the middle of the night and said, "Oh, I got it. This is how this scene is going to go"? Did you sit down and I think there was an old episode of the Dick Van Dyke Show where he left to write a book. And he went and secluded himself somewhere. Just curious. I'm always curious about the process to put something as comprehensive as this together.
I do not write every day. I get chastised by writers who say, "Whoa, you got to write every day."
That's why I asked.
So what I tend to do is so the way I write is I hear dialogue in my head, and I think about the ways I want my people to interact, and snippets like I invent something that I think is witty or funny, which I hope it is, or poignant. And then I build a scene around that so I can use that dialogue. It's the exact opposite of how most people write.
A lot of people write. Do you, because you're telling a story here, and even the title implies, a chronological progression. Did you write pieces chronologically, or did you say, "Oh, I got the idea for this part of it"? Did you sketch out the entire plot, or was it just organic? Okay, we started here, now I'm here, and now I'm here, and you moved it ahead.
So the way I write is when I hear snippets of dialogue in my head, I just put them on my phone. I just write them out. And I save them because Sarah really at a certain point told me exactly what she was doing and where she was going. So it became quite linear. And then I would look at the dialogue that I had written down and think, gee, where can I put that? Where is that going to go?
Well, that's interesting.
And so I didn't map it out. I didn't have an outline until one of my writing teachers said, you got to have an outline. So I'd written 2/3 of the book before I went and put it in outline form.
So what do you want to say to people who are hearing this interview and say, gee, what do I get out of it? Like for you, what is like the intent here, the general intent to portray?
I think it's about pursuing your dreams in the face of a lot of, adversity. And I think we all sort of had these dreams that we don't necessarily pursue. And this is about conquering all the voices in your head that tell you not to go for your dream. And
that's fair. That's nice. And it fits in even what you said about the creation of the book, because you said you had people in the hospital at the time. And my reaction, I didn't get to say it then. That's life. We all I mean, we're all dealing with stuff like that. Last question. And again, available wherever books are sold. Amazon, right? That's where
Amazon. It's online. It's not
online. Oh, it's online. Okay. Are you happy with it, or are you one of those that is never satisfied and you say, that segment I should have written that better? I know for myself things that I put out. Sometimes even TV shows I say, I didn't quite nail that. Your thoughts?
So I totally don't want to sound arrogant, but I love this book.
Yay! I'm so happy. It doesn't sound arrogant. Then you put out the product that you wanted to put out. That's wonderful. So it is The Rise and Fall and Return of Sarah Mandelbaum. You can look for it. And what your website is that's what we do?
That's carakagan.com, and it's on Amazon.
Cara, CARAKAGAN.com. Okay. And you can find it.
BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com, and in Kindle and paperback.
And check out KRVC, join the book club, because Cara will be there. You can continue this interview with her person.
Absolutely. And volunteer.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
We need your help for the holidays.
Cara, thanks for being a great Bronxite and a talented person. And let's all learn, and I will finish the book. Let's all learn more about Sarah Mandelbaum.
Thanks so much, Gary.
Thank you.
I so appreciate
Great.
it.
Okay, that will do it for the Bronx Buzz. We thank Jonathan from the city for joining us. And guess what? The curtain don't fall and the creek don't rise. We'll see you next week.